Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we get the right guests and ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you. We're live and interactive, and tonight is a review of the 2022 budget presented on Wednesday, the 17th of November by Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Tonight, we have one of the most vociferous members of Parliament in the finance side, who is in the Finance Committee, Honorable Isaac Adongo, to go through the budget from the minorities' perspective. He will be telling us what they make of the overall document and where they see the state of Ghana's economy and why they think that this budget doesn't address the main challenges facing the economy of Ghana. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we're talking to the Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga Central, who is also ranking member, Deputy ranking member for the Finance Committee of Parliament, Honorable Isaac Adongo. Good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, and it's a pleasure to be here again.
I like your glasses.
Yeah, I'm trying to copy you. Maybe next time I'll buy your own.
I've been going through the themes of all the budgets. Let me just run through before we get in. So 2018, putting Ghana back to work was the theme of the budget. 2019, a stronger economy for jobs and prosperity. 2020, consolidating the gains for growth, jobs and prosperity for all. 2021, which was read earlier this year, economic revitalization through completion, consolidation and continuity. This budget has been captioned building a sustainable entrepreneurial nation, fiscal consolidation and job creation. Honorable Adongo, what's your overall assessment of the budget and where it leaves us?
Well, I think the budget, in my view, happens to be a crisis budget. A crisis budget because we've come to a point where we can no longer manage the narrative but manage the economy. And I think that the Minister for Finance and the economic management team have missed a great opportunity to carry the people of Ghana along in taking some of the most difficult decisions to reposition our economy and to claw back some of the resilience that we've lost as a result of the impact of COVID. That, for me, is the most important part of the weaknesses I've seen in this budget.
So they missed a great opportunity to carry the people along. It's a crisis budget. So what was most startling or apparent to you in listening to the budget? What was the most important thing you noticed listening to him?
So what I saw is a budget that was seeking to address some fundamental weaknesses in our budget that we've carried along over the years and pretended that it was all usual, and using PR to manage the narrative so that Ghanaians believed that we had a very strong, resilient, and a vibrant economy.
Okay.
And that economy, when it was struck by the first sight of headwinds, could not stand it.
Okay.
And it was quite clear that we've been building an economy that just didn't have the capacity to deal with the resilience that were required. And I'll give you examples. When the NDC left power, and here I want to say that the resilience of an economy to deal with crises such as COVID is measured by two key factors. One is the level of your financial buffers, and the second is your level of fiscal buffers, which we loosely call the fiscal space. So when you have fiscal space, it means that in the period of crisis, you can actually squeeze out the fiscal space in order to deal with the challenges and revert to normalizing the position that you were in terms of a fiscal framework and begin to engage in a structured movement in the next couple of years. The second one is that, and so here you would find that we have problems with the wage bill, which has now become the number two most significant item of expenditure. In fact, it has lost its place as the number one. Under this government, interest payment has become the number one. And now we're spending 103% of our tax revenue just to pay for interest service. What that simply means is that once you pay for your interest costs, no matter how the people of Ghana break their backs to give you money, it just isn't enough. You must go to borrow. And you'll notice that we run a primary balance deficit of about 8.3 billion Ghana cedis. It means that we still have to borrow to pay for part of the interest cost. So that means that you don't have fiscal space in the budget. So when disaster struck, your economy is already gone. So you can't accommodate any additional expenditures and you can't accommodate any additional pressures. So that is one of the key things that you do when you are managing the economy, to create the fiscal buffers in order to deal with headwinds. So when they complain about COVID, it's because by the time COVID arrived, we had squandered all the fiscal buffers or fiscal space that could contain it. The second one is financial buffers. How much financial resources have you saved in order to deal with a difficult day such as COVID? So NDC left office with $500 million sitting in the sinking fund. Okay, we left office with approximately $300 million sitting in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. We left office with about $200 million sitting in the Stabilization Fund. Together, you had $1 billion that you could use to deal with a headwind even before you call your neighbors to come and support you. We don't have that now. And it is because we depleted that, and we created negative buffers, negative financial buffers. We went ahead to create further fiscal rigidities in our budget framework. So we went ahead and said, okay, monies that are due this country over the next 10 years, we want to use it to go and mortgage and borrow for now, so that we'll only use that money that will come tomorrow to service the debt while the debt itself still remains. And I'm talking here ESLA bond. So the ESLA proceeds that we are getting is not available to even future generations because it's been mortgaged. So that creates a further rigidity. You cannot take a decision on using that money for something else. And it is the reason I told the unions, the drivers' unions, that they should forget it, because that money is being mortgaged and it's been promised to people who lent money to us for the next 10 years. Then you have a situation where you decide that future flows that are meant to support GET Fund to build schools and to provide infrastructure for our children has been mortgaged for another 10 years. So again, that money is not available. You have little discretion because it is no more your money. It is money for people you have borrowed for. Then you have a situation where even bauxite that you haven't seen with your naked eye, but somebody has told you some bauxite is buried underground, you are willing to use it to go and take money and hope that if you decide to, exploit those bauxite, it won't go to the development of the country, but it will go to the person who is borrowing. The mineral royalties mortgage, which they call the EJAPA, is in the same vein. So we have moved from having positive fiscal, financial buffers of over 1 billion that we left, to not just depleting those buffers, but creating negative buffers in our fiscal space, which then even strangles our ability to use future flows. So that is one of the key challenges that we have created. And that has been the main reason. Let me give you some examples when they begin to tell us that it is because of COVID that, they are taxing us a lot. It's not true. When COVID struck, we were told that we are spending about 19 billion additional expenditure for COVID-related expenses we didn't budget for. That is fair. Then they told us that our revenues had dropped by approximately 11 billion Ghana cedis. So together, we needed to fill a hole of about 40 billion. Okay, so it's equivalent to a family that is in crisis, that has had some tragedy. And they say, look, we don't have the money. Can everybody come up with some special contribution so we can get 40 billion to deal with our problem? Now, when you deal with that problem, and the following year, 2021, the people give you almost 10 billion more in revenue. And the same people in 2021 realize that you are no more spending 19 billion on COVID, but you are spending just 1.5 billion, in fact 2.3 billion, with 758 million borrowed, which you said you have even put it into capital expenditure, and yet they are COVID vaccines. I don't know how COVID vaccines can be treated as capital expenditure. But let's grant that. It gives you 2.3 billion. So if you were incurring a cost of 19 billion, and this time it has come down to, say, about 17 billion, to say, because you now have only 2.3 out of 19 billion. So approximately 17 billion is available. You are not incurring that cost. You still go and tell the people, give me 19 billion more. And say, give me the 13 billion you gave me more because I complained about COVID.
Okay.
Giving you a figure of almost 40 billion. You still spend it in a period when there is no COVID. It means that you are really not taking the decision to revert to your original position, but you have found a way to fill in almost 40 billion non-existent expenditure that you can attribute to COVID.
I'll come to that. There's a couple of points that seem to suggest that things were going a certain way before COVID.
Yeah.
So he gives about 4 things. Interest rates, 91-day Treasury bill declined from 16.4% end of 2016 to 14.6% end of 2019. Now, gross international reserves increased from 2.8 months of imports end of 2016 to 4 months end of 2019. This is all pre-COVID. Fiscal deficit reduced from 6.5% end of 2016 to 4.8% end of 2019. Don't forget, COVID came March 2020. Primary balance improved from deficit of 1.1 of GDP end of 2016 to surplus of 0.8% end of 2019. GDP grew from 3.4% end of 2016 to 6.5%. So the basic markers of economic performance from end 2016 to end 2019 were all moving northwards until 2020 and everything came down. So on the face of it, you can say that it was COVID that disrupted. I've given you 4 things. I've given you international reserves, fiscal deficit, primary balance, and even the movement of interest rates, all moving northwards until COVID.
So Bernard, very basic question to any economic manager of anybody managing the economy. Which one would you be more concerned about? That you had an economy handed to you which was using about 60% to finance interest costs and giving you a room of 40% to do other things. And you are saying treasury bill rates. Who determines treasury bill rates? Who borrows to determine treasury bill rates? Treasury bill rates are determined by government. So if government decides to artificially keep treasury bill rates low, you go to the market and see whether if you go to borrow the money, whether you get that treasury bill rate. That is the first point I want to make. The second point is that we disagree with the deficit figures because we want to work with the IMF figures. When we finally went to IMF to ask for 1 billion to support us with COVID, we told them the truth. And the truth we told them was that our deficit was 7.7%.
You're talking end of 2019?
Exactly. And we told them that our primary balance was in the deficit of 4%. So the deception that they were carrying in Ghana no longer holds. We now have an official record of an institution that has an overarching power to sanction you if you lied. And when they appeared before those people, these were the numbers. So you want to say that 7.7% deficit. Even in COVID, none of our peers around us did 7% deficit. Even in COVID. And you were doing 7.7 in 2019. And you are saying what? You had already run your economy aground. You were the worst performing economy in terms of deficit around your peers. Now, the second one is that primary balance. You're already doing negative primary balance. Your colleagues were doing positive primary balance. If you decide to talk about reserves, which reserves are you using? Gross international reserves.
Yes.
Are gross international reserves for you? Gross international reserve is a measure of the value of people's money that are sitting in our country. They are not for government. So government's own reserves are the net international reserves. That is the money that is available to the central bank to intervene. If today investors decide that they are reversing or they are taking away their money and they are selling your city bonds to you, they can't go back to their home country with the city.
Okay.
You must find dollars for them. You can't go and use gross international reserve to fund it. You use your net international reserves. Why are they not telling us our net international reserves? Which is a measure of our level of international vulnerability. But they are using gross international reserves. So that is a deception. But I'm saying that the reality of our economy is that we have an economy that is worse from 2016 to 2019. Because 2016, we had buffers of $1 billion. That $1 billion we went begging for, we left that for them. What we went begging for from IMF, we had left that for them. You don't want that type of economy? The second one is that when we were leaving, we gave them fiscal space of over 40% when you take into account the interest payment we're making. They said they don't want that. They want an economy where you now spend 103% of your tax revenue. So Ghanaians break their back to give you the money just to pay for interest.
Is the interest payments not based on debt which is due? So that if you've taken a loan which matures in a specific year, until you are able to renegotiate it, it's not necessarily a function of economic performance. If you took a bond in 2007 and it's a 10-year bond, it will be due in 2017. So it's not really a question of economic management. It's a question of when the the bonds are due. Is that not the issue?
Bernard, have this government ever paid any bond that is due from their own resources?
They borrow most.
So,
I
so
think
you borrow to refinance.
Even Tekwe did that.
No, when Tekwe put $500 million into the sinking fund, it was used to pay the remaining balance on President Kufuor's bond of $750 million. From our own 2007.
Yes.
We redeemed it in 2017 using the sinking fund that Tekwe had built. Are you getting the point I'm making? So the fact that you are borrowing to stand in the same place and even increase it in the end just doesn't make sense. But I'm saying that at the end of the day, the bottom line is that we are borrowing almost $8.9 billion a year to fund the repayment of interest costs through our negative primary balance. Okay, that is competing with $9 billion in 2019 of our capital expenditure. And that capital expenditure of $9 billion includes 758 million Ghana cedis that we borrow to buy COVID vaccines. How can COVID vaccines be treated as capital expenditure? But Bernard, the other difficulty, and I want us to move there, is that in 2022, the Minister for Finance says he wants to grow our tax revenue by additional 7% to 20%.
Yes.
That gives you 35 billion Ghana cedis. 35 billion Ghana cedis. Okay? If COVID, we needed just 40 billion of 19% expenditure and a recovery of 11 billion shortfall in revenue. And the people are giving you 35 billion in 1 year. Now, in that 35 billion, you are actually not incurring any additional significant cost on COVID, because you indicated that even in 2021, you spent just about 2.3. Okay. Now you say that because you want to take 3.5 billion from the pockets of Ghanaians, you want to deal with the unemployment problem, which is a major problem to deal with. But you cannot use the vulnerability of Ghanaians to put your hand in their pocket. So we ask you, so how much are you going to spend out of the 35 billion to take care of unemployment? You say 1 billion. That's an insult. Do you agree with me?
But
that is an insult, because you cannot be spending 1 billion on unemployment when you are taking 35 billion additional money. In addition to that, the 13 billion we paid additional in 2021, we haven't stopped paying. So if you add that, we are looking at almost 48 billion Ghanaians are giving you just to help you run the economy. You have suddenly found a way to fill this 48 billion with other expenditures that didn't exist in 2019 when we didn't have COVID. So the starting point is to find ways to find that 48 billion. What exactly are you spending it on? When you are not spending it on infrastructure, you are not building roads, you are not building hospitals, you are not providing us with education infrastructure. What exactly are you using the money for? What I see
he's written, total projected expenditure 2022, the breakdown is given as arrears clearance, interest payments, compensation, capital expenditure, grants to other government units, goods and services, and other expenditure. Percentages are given. I don't know whether that's what you're referring to.
Leonard,
the expenditure he's planning for 2022 is 137 billion cedis, of which 26% is going into... 27%, which is the largest, is going into interest payments. And then 26% is compensation. So those are the two, about 50%.
Bernard, I am saying that we are giving you, you're asking us to give you 35, you tighten our belt so you can put your hand in our pocket and take 35 billion of our money. Okay? You already put our hand in our pocket and took 13 billion last year. You still want to take it this year, in addition to the 35. That's 48 billion. Now we ask you, what are you going to do? So, I know your problem. Your biggest problem is unemployment. So we are going to do you start. Do you get it? And so give me 48 billion. That's okay. So how much are you using to solve the problem that you say is our biggest problem, which is the unemployment? You said 1 billion. Bernard, how can somebody be such insensitive? So insensitive that you are willing to tax the poor woman in the village who takes 100 Ghana cedis just to buy medicine to survive. And that woman would have been happy that the child that she took to school and is back sitting at home will get a job. That woman is giving you 48 billion, and your sweetener, which you are using to force the bitter pill down her throat, is 1 billion.
Are you referring to, because the e-levy, they mentioned about 4 things they would do with the extra money, of which unemployment was one.
And which other things?
Are you saying that the extra money they're asking for is only unemployment that they stated they will use it to do?
Bernard, can you tell me?
No,
I'm struggling to find it. And 48 billion, for goodness, not 48,000. I'm not mentioning 48,000. No. I'm mentioning 48 billion. I want to see you put almost 30 billion into infrastructure. Then I know my kids are no longer going to do double track. Then I know my roads in the village will be fixed, that the road minister will not be insulting educated people who go on demonstration. So that I know the hospitals are built in Agenda 111. Unfortunately, you are not putting the money there. So what exactly is sitting at the Flagstaff House swallowing 48 billion? And in addition to that, you are borrowing a further 37 billion. Mr. Speaker, Bernard,
Mr. Host,
we are looking at almost 83 billion monies you are asking from Ghanaians in 2022. Show us what you are going to use for, and make sure that our children are not sitting at home. You said 1 billion Ghana cedis. Is that the reason our kids are sitting at home? Is that what you mean by solving unemployment problem? Clearly, this is a government that has lost it. The government has decided that it was not willing to go back to where we were and eliminate those additional expenditures that occurred because of COVID.
Let me read what
so
it
that
said.
we can
Let me just read what it said.
Yeah.
So paragraph 318, a portion of the proceeds from the levy will be used to support entrepreneurship, youth employment, cyber security, digital and road infrastructure, among others.
Leonard, all of that translates into numbers. Cyber security, is the government that provides cyber security? Is the government that will go to Stanchart and spend money for them to protect their systems? Is the government that would ensure that people cannot hack into the systems of MTN?
But don't we have a national we have a national institute in charge of cyber security.
Bernard, and so, that institute will take 35 billion to run?
I don't know. I've given you 4 items. So
listen, Okay.
But I've just mentioned 5 different things
that
they will do with the money.
Let me tell you. Unemployment and youth employment, entrepreneurship, and you didn't say entrepreneurship is their main driver. So entrepreneurship and youth unemployment is the same thing. 1 billion Ghana cedis. Out of additional, the 48 is additional revenue. It's not new revenue.
Adongo, if you give somebody NAPCO, is youth employment. If you set up somebody under NEIP to start, or give them a loan to start their business, that's entrepreneurship. So youth employment and entrepreneurship are related, but not necessarily the same.
Okay, Bernard, I am saying that those matters you are raising are catered for as existing expenditure in our system,
all right,
which we are already funding. But in addition to the money we'll give you to fund this, you're asking us to give you almost 48 billion more.
All right.
And we are not asking, that additional 48 billion, what do we get? You say infrastructure. And infrastructure, we already funded 9 billion of that. Now you are doing 16 billion, 7 billion. Is that not the difference?
So digital and road infrastructure.
What is digital?
For example,
accounting software.
No, if you lay a
billing system.
If you lay a cable for fiber, that's digital.
Have they ever laid a cable?
We
laid fiber. They never laid fiber. In fact, today I heard the most ridiculous thing I heard was that they have license. They have given the most license for private sector laying of fiber, just license. But the man who laid the fiber, he didn't do anything. Bernard, you cannot ask us for 48 billion. And you are giving us this.
So are you going to ask, the debate starts tomorrow, are you going to ask for a breakdown?
Before the debate, let me educate Ghanaians about why they are asking us to tighten our belt and give them 48 billion. It is to clean up their mess. It is not to provide any value. Because I've just told you, if you were already funding infrastructure at 9 billion, which we were paying for, and you are adding more to 16 billion, it's not 7 billion. And you have given us that you are spending 1 billion for entrepreneurship, which is the only thing we are not funding. As for cyber security, I don't see how you would even be putting any major figure on it. So 8 billion, and you are taking 48 billion. So the 40 billion, what are you using it for?
We'll come back and see if we can find that answer. This is the point of view.
You must bring them here.
My guest is Honorable Isaac Adongo. He does not think that the additional request for revenue that the government is asking for is justified by the expenditure plans. The other issues he has with the budget, we'll deal with them when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight, we're trying to read the mind of the minority ahead of a big debate starting tomorrow on the budget. This weekend, they were at home for a brief budget discussion where the finance minister addressed members of parliament. Isaac Adongo is a deputy ranking member on finance. He's not impressed with the budget. He thinks the government is trying to paper over the cracks and they miss a big opportunity. So I wanted to read to you some of the achievements that they've listed in the budget. There are about 25. I don't know if we have time for all of this, but I'll just read a few. Reduce electricity tariffs cumulatively by 10.9% compared to a cumulative increase of 264% under NDC. It's in the budget. Provided free water for households for April, May, June 2020. That's number 2. Doubled capitation grant from 4.5 to 10 cedis. That's number 3. Established NAFCO of 100,000 graduates to build the job skills of our graduates to be absorbed into the workforce. That's 4. Created jobs and stopped the freeze on recruitment in the public sector. Over 295,000 people recruited. That's number 5. Abolished fees for postgraduate medical training in Ghana. 6. Increase the share of the District Assembly Common Fund to persons with disability by 50%. 7. Exempted KIA from market tolls. 8. Ensure the implementation of our pledge of employing 50% of persons who manage their country's toll booths from persons with disabilities. 9. 10. Expanded the LEAP by 150,000 beneficiaries. 11. Expanded school feeding program from 1.6 million children to 2.1 million children. Also increased the amount spent on each child by 25%. Then restored teacher training allowance, nursing allowance training. Abolished the 3-month pay policy for teachers. Absorb cost of BEC and WASSCE exams. Abolished or reduced 15 taxes, including excise duty on petroleum, VAT on financial services and real estate, domestic airline tickets. And then there's so many. They go on and talk about 600 million COVID fund for small business, etc., etc., etc. These seem quite significant.
Over what period? 5 years?
Probably 4. If you look, 2017, 2018, 2019.
It includes 2021.
Okay. 5 years, yes.
Have you put together how much monies we have given them in taxes and revenues? Have you looked at how much money they have borrowed to create a Ghana that is in distress? And if you put all of that together, that's what they've done. Do you know that at the moment, the energy sector is crippling with debts? They are unable to pay. And we are looking at close to $3 billion debt in the energy sector. Is that what they are proud of? They want to collapse the system completely? These are just jokes. Because we are talking about very important matters of the Ghanaian life. All the 5 taxes that you have mentioned, since you came to power, we have counted 18 taxes. 18, not 5 that they said they abolished. 18. Even one of them, when they said they had taken it off in one hand, they took more in the other hand. You remember the brouhaha over the benchmark values. The benchmark values and the discount that was given was not, what do you call it, was not an exercise that was meant to give them a favor. After they abolished the 1% special import levy, they went to the port and decided to find a way to collect that money back even more. So whereas the commissioner is given the mandate when he's suspicious about the valuation of a particular invoice under invoicing, he is allowed to use the commissioner's value, his own valuation, to determine the value on which we should assess the tax or the import duty. They went to the port and make it a general rule instead of the exception, and created the commissioner's values for every single item, called the benchmark valuation. So importers at Abosuoka who jubilated suddenly realized that when they went to the port, they were paying 2-3% more than when even the 1% was not taken off. And they agitated. When they agitated as a compromise, you decided to give them a discount of 50% on other goods and 30% on transportation. 2019. So quite clearly, you can tell who these people are. When they told us that they were removing VAT on bank services, which was a nuisance, last year, they came and imposed a levy on the same items in the bank. So now they are charging bank charges. They are charging, how do you call them, commissions and fees. When we were using the VAT, it means the banks could actually claim and set it off against other VAT that they paid for in order to run their business. This one is a final tax. So the banks are already paying on levies. In addition to just charging them on their own fees, you now want to charge the transactions of their customers.
The last year was a 5% on profit before tax to help defray outstanding commitments as a result of financial sector cleanup.
So that
was corporate tax, not for customers.
No, I am saying yes. So I'm not
this
saying
is the
now.
2021 one.
I'm saying now. What we have now brought that they call the e-levy.
Okay.
It's now taxing the customer. So in addition to the bank, which you said was nuisance, you are now charging even their customers' transactions. Bernard.
Has the memorandum for that levy been brought to you? Because I'm asking because when I interviewed Charles Edu Boahin, he denied that this would include certain transactions. Although another minister said something elsewhere.
It's not another minister. It is what the minister came to say.
Yes,
the minister
it's there, 315.
He listed. Why we didn't go to school.
No, but I'm just asking that usually when they propose the tax in the general document, they will bring further and better particulars, won't they?
Bernard.
Is that not the way it's done?
I want to tell you, this is a killer tax, and it must be killed before it kills you and I.
So in any shape or form,
in any shape or form,
if they even reduce it to say 0.5%
of what?
Of
what transaction? Does that now take away the fact that taxing the banking sector is a nuisance? You can't have double standards. You can't deceive them. You see, that is the reason why our governance system is suffering credibility. That will tell the people one thing. And
so you're referring to what they did in 2017 when they said that VAT on financial services was a nuisance tax?
I remember my chairman at that time got up and listed them and said, Yamutu.
So
the Yamutu has resurrected.
So this is bringing back the so-called nuisance tax of 2017.
And adding more. Bernard, what is even worse is that you are revising fees and charges by 15%. And the fees and charges of all state services. So if your family member is dead and you are crying, you will go and meet 15% at the mortuary. Bernard, if your child is sick and you rush there, you will meet 15% when you are picking your card.
They are saying to compensate for the non-collection of road tolls.
We will come to that one, but I want to explain to you what it means, the fees and charges. When you go to EPA, you will meet 15%. You go to get a passport, you get 15%. If you go for any government service, and if you list them, they are over 100. And these levies reflect in our economy as taxes. Okay? That is a killer.
So you think people will be worse off? If you compare the road toll that they've removed and then this 15% increasing.
Look, the road toll, including other levies that we are charging on petroleum, is about 72 million Ghana cedis.
Yeah.
72 million.
Yes.
I have just mentioned to you, they are looking to put their hands in our pocket and take 48 billion. In return, 72 million. Bernard, I don't know where you live, but when was the last time you crossed a toll booth? And when you crossed, was it not 50 pesos or 1 cedi?
When you were going to Ho, you would have used about 3.
I went to Boga.
You didn't go for the parliamentary?
No.
You were not there?
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama was there on a special assignment.
So I'm sure you'd have passed through a few toll booths.
And you pay how much?
It depends on your car. You use V8, so you pay 1
So when you put everything together, it's 48 billion that you are taking from our pocket.
But does the 48 billion not include expanding the tax net?
What is the expansion?
No, I mean,
can you show me the expansion?
I'm coming. If, for example, they said only 2 million people pay taxes, and then based on what they are doing, they are hoping to get more people in the informal sector to pay. It's not necessarily the same people who will pay the 48 billion. So they are saying that we have 17 million people registered above 18. If more of them pay taxes, we'll get more money. But you are making it sound as if it's the same group of people who will pay that jump to the 48 billion.
Bernard, who are the people who do the Momo transfers? Are they the women in the village who are unemployed? It is you and I. When you get salary, it goes to the bank account. I don't know the last time you transferred money to your family. But when you go and you take the money, that money they have already tax pay as you earn. You are the one doing the transfer. So how can you be burdening the very people who are paying the taxes? The businesses that are helping you collect value-added taxes on revenue, you are now giving them additional. In fact, even the value-added tax that they have collected from you, for you that they are paying to you when they transfer, you will still tax them 1.75. Do you know that businesses who collect value-added tax, it is not their obligation. It is just that they are tax collecting agents for government. Government cannot be where I am selling to collect its money. So government taxes me to use my resources of my accountants, my salespeople, and my clerical staff to collect that money for government and run the administrative procedure for filing and paying. When I do that on behalf of government and I decide now to pay the money through a transfer, government taxes me for helping government to collect money that I am not obliged to pay. Bernard,
so you will not support any version of electronic transaction levy?
This is anti-business and it is still anti-poor. So
at the same time?
So yeah, it is. I have just told you why it is anti-poor. The woman in the village won't get the money to go and buy the medicine. So a progressive tax, which should take more from the rich to compensate for the poor, is taking proportionately the same from the rich and the poor.
So it's regressive? Very
regressive, but even anti-poor and anti-business. Because even the businessman, even before you make profit, they are tasking your capital.
They also said they will review property rates, which is something we've all been calling for.
Bernard,
I'm looking at their tax policies.
Yes, and you see...
Is that not something we should applaud?
Bernard, how are they going to collect the property rate? They are saying that. Do you know
they will assist MMDAs to implement a common platform for property rate administration,
and then they will share
to enhance property rate collection and its accountability.
And then
that's what they said.
Complete it. Then they will share the money, 50-50.
Between the assembly and them.
The assembly, that's the only revenue they get.
So you disagree?
Now, in addition to your 48 billion, you now want to go and collect the money. So let me just
understand you. Are you saying that the revenue they're asking for, we don't need it, or they use it for something wrong, or they are? I want to understand your point about the revenue.
I am saying that if you take the COVID expenditure and what prompted the expansion of our fiscal environment by 40 billion, which no longer exists, there's an opportunity to cut 40 billion expenditure. Then we can have a conversation.
They should cut it in which areas?
They know where they are burying it. You are no more having COVID, but you are still spending that 19 billion on what?
But I just mentioned the 6 areas.
Which 6 areas? Did they put figures to them for you?
No, they did not.
So what are we discussing? I am talking about the money I'm losing, and you are talking about You see, these people have been managing narrative for a very long time without managing the economy. The economy requires, difficult decisions in managing an economy is not about just putting your hand in people's pocket and taking their money. But it is about also looking inward and being responsible enough not to let them fund waste in the system. Let me give you one example of waste. If you read the budget, the minister says that what they used to call the infrastructure for poverty alleviation, is it PEF, something, which was emanating from the so-called...
Is it IPEP?
Something that was coming from the so-called 1 million per constituency.
IPEP?
Yes, you remember?
IPEP.
Now, you know what he said? He says that he is going to, this year, he's not going to give them money for new projects. He's only going to help them to finish the existing projects. Then, whatever outstanding obligation that is left, he would pay it over 2 years. Bernard, it means that the development authority, the 3 of them, are no more useful. It means that the special development initiative and its minister and technical staff no longer necessary. Meanwhile, these projects are situated in districts where we have district assemblies with competent technical staff. What stops you from scrapping this and saving us almost 250 million in order that you transfer the projects to the district assemblies to complete them? And if there are any outstanding obligations, you pay them through the district assemblies. Just for the job for the boys, you want us to incur a cost of almost 300 million. And you and I should pay Momo to compensate for that. The president is saying that he doesn't care how many times we complain about using our state resources for his comfort creation. By continuously chartering a flight. Every time, even now he's on holidays, we are paying for a flight, sitting there at almost $14,000 an hour. And then you come and tell me I should tighten my belt? Who does that? Bernard, this government must sit up. There is an opportunity for this government to cut almost 30 billion of wasteful expenditure.
If you can point some out to me apart from what you just said, I'll be very happy.
So 19 billion of COVID expenditure, we've still filled it up even after we left COVID.
But we're not done with COVID. They are still vaccinating.
Yeah, but we spent 2.3 billion. But our expenditure is still at COVID levels. So how come COVID levels you spend 19? Now there's no COVID, your COVID has gone down, you are spending 2.3.
But there's still COVID.
Oh, but we are spending 2.3 instead of 19. So what has happened to the over 7 billion? How come that 7 billion has still found its way into expenditures in government framework? If your family has a crisis and you go to borrow 19 billion to solve it, do you continue borrowing 19 billion when the crisis does not exist? Even when the crisis now costs 2.3, you still go and borrow 19 billion. Or that you have a crisis that made your income to drop by 11 billion. Because of that, you incurred additional costs totaling 40 billion plus the 19. Now COVID has expired. You have been able to get back not just 11 billion, but over 13 billion more. But you are still incurring the 40 billion expenditure. What kind of creature are you? What do you want to leave for your family? And it's not because your family now comes to see a new brand new house. That is so head of family you have done so well.
You don't understand the COVID expenditure. They need to explain that.
I don't know. I don't understand how after COVID we've been able to fill up the same expenditure and we are still at expenditure levels above COVID.
I was thinking about the vaccination. They said they are yet to vaccinate 9 million people. We haven't vaccinated even 2 million.
They said the vaccines they bought was 758 million and they borrowed money to buy that vaccine. It's not even our tax money. They still went and borrowed 758 million. And they are saying that vaccine, somehow or another, is like building a school or constructing a road. So it is sitting in our capital expenditure. Yeah. What type of... Bernard, I don't know whether...
That is interesting.
It's interesting. Read the budget. These are financial engineers. Listen, this so-called tax measures they have brought, it is nothing other than wanting Ghanaians to break their back just to find out wasteful phantom expenditures that just don't make sense. And until they are committed to right-sizing our expenditure back to the pre-COVID era and properly account for incremental expenditures that will recur, they should not come and put their hands in our pockets.
We'll take a short break whilst we come and think through what can be done. He's mentioned some interesting things around the COVID expenditure and why he doesn't think the amount of money the government is asking for is justified. This is The Point of View. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight we're talking to Honorable Isaac Adongo, MP for Bolgatanga Central, Deputy Ranking Member on Finance. Now, the budget will be debated on Tuesday, or the debate will start on Tuesday. I just wanted to get a clear sense of what the minority completely disagree with and what you will ask for clarification on, because you've made two different sets of points. So just reiterate for me what you completely will oppose and what you feel you need more clarification on if you are to approve any aspect of this budget. Okay,
so the first one is that we are aware that Ghana is going through a very difficult time in the international capital markets. And the market was looking to see confidence out of this budget. The numbers as we have presented them basically casts a slur on our image in the face of the international community. And I want the minister to take notice of that and realize that the international community, the international capital market is the most smartest and the most efficient in the world because they work with a lot of analysts who understand this. The minister is saying that he's moving from a tax to GDP of 12% to approximately 20%. That's about 8% growth. I was even talking about 7%, but that's about 8% growth. And yet, if you pick his tax revenue, which is approximately 80 billion, and you strike it as a percentage of the nominal projection of our GDP, which is just about 502 billion.
For that Champions League.
It gives you a debt to GDP of 15.6%. We cannot sell this. Because if an investor takes your own numbers, 80 billion or 89 billion, strike it against a GDP nominal of 502%, and they are getting in the region of 15.6 to 16%, and you are talking 20% in the narrative. That is a clear deception, and that worsens the confidence crisis that we have on the market. And we want the minister to take critical look at this. The second one is that, yes, we agree that government needs revenue, but we also agree that the trajectory that we are going and the medium-term path shows that Ghana would now be a vulnerable economy if we don't take the appropriate steps in order to rationalize expenditures so that our revenues are brought in line with expenditures, in order that we have the appropriate fiscal and financial buffers to withstand the headwinds. Ghana will continue to be in trouble. And I want to give you the examples that I want to cite. I'm saying this because our expenditure framework is unreasonable. It is unreasonable because you cannot have an exceptional expenditure for which region you went on a fiscal expansion, and after that expenditure it disappears, you are still operating at a higher level than you began. Clearly, you are filling up the space, you are not creating buffers, and your economy will be more vulnerable. Because we don't know the next variant of COVID that is going to arrive. And if it does arrive, do we have an economy with the level of resilience and buffers to deal with it? So the minister must address that. The other one is that, yes, it is important that you have to raise revenue. But you don't kill the hen that lays the golden egg. In fact, you don't kill the people of Ghana with killer taxes just because you want money. Because they must be alive to give you more money. So government must withdraw this e-levy, think through it properly, engage in the appropriate consultation with stakeholders such as the banks, the poor people that are going to suffer, and all the people who matter in this arrangement, so that we arrive at a solution that is acceptable to all. We are not...
So in this present form, you disagree?
I don't enjoy denying government revenue. But I don't also enjoy killing our people and letting them break their back just to go and pay for debt. No. So government must begin to focus and must begin to look at what is the realistic expenditure levels that we need to incur.
So let me just be clear. Is the NDC saying that if the rate of 1.75 were lower, you would agree? The concept is what you oppose?
It's not the rate. It's the structuring.
The what?
So the structuring of the transaction. So why should I pay for paying monies that I collected on behalf of GRA? Why should I pay monies or taxes when I have just transferred money to buy stock on whose stock I already have taxes on them? And yet in the end, I will be paying those taxes in terms of the taxes on my revenue, which are VAT and the rest. I will pay taxes on my profit.
So the fact that there's a tax on digital transactions, you disagree? Not even the percentage?
If it is structured to identify the fact that we shouldn't be overburdening existing taxpayers who are already making a contribution of significant proportion. Because the 48 billion, we're unable to account for it. That 1 billion you start is a scam. And
you're back to that point. So I get you clear. So they must get back to international credibility. They must, expenditure framework needs to be more reasonable. And then the way they propose the electronic tax transaction needs to change. I see. So the debate begins tomorrow. How many days does it usually last?
Most likely members will have the whole of this week, and probably leadership will run up next week. But people must understand that what we are discussing from tomorrow is the policies underpinning the budget. And the policies underpinning the budget are so broad that you disagree with some, but you agree with some. But you are you are not able to isolate those that you disagree and take a decision on them separately.
So you can't say disagree with the tax policies, therefore you oppose.
So I disagree with tax policies.
So you take it as a whole?
I disagree with tax policies. But I agree with the common fund allocation that will go to Bogatanga Municipal Assembly. And yet I must take a decision with the two combined. That is the tricky part. But when Ghanaians hear that...
So if you approve the budget, it doesn't mean you approve everything that was in there.
No, because the details, such as what we have just discussed, will come to us individually. So there will be a bill on e-levy, which we can disagree and reject on its own. But to disagree with the entire policy of government in its totality would mean that government cannot work.
I get you.
It would mean that my people, if there's a policy there to provide
so
water...
it means the budget overall will be passed, but specific components that will come in form of bills will be opposed.
So when you hear that they said Parliament has approved, you need to find out what have we approved.
I get it.
Because if I disagree with the entire budget, what I'm simply saying is that they shouldn't pay for children to go to school.
Which is not what you intend to do.
Exactly. So we need to be very clear that what we are looking at now and to approve is the government policy. Bernard, it's a reform we need to make. In other places, you know, the Minister for Finance is supposed to submit what we call the fiscal strategy document, together with what we call the fiscal risk statement, which together forms the policy orientation of government to cabinet in May, end of May.
All right.
In other jurisdictions, that policy is debated by Parliament and input sent back to cabinet to inform the estimates. In our case, we discuss the fiscal policy strategy as part of the budget in the policy field.
So that's structural.
So we are unable to.
We'll be covering the debate live on City TV, so you can see him on his feet with the others, Kweku Kwarteng and Co, Apenyo Makin and all of them debating. Thank you, Isaac Adongo, MP for Bolga Central, Deputy Ranking Member of the Finance Committee. This is just the beginning. There'll be a few more programs on the budget as we try and bring finality to this very complicated document. Thanks for watching. My name is Bernard Avle. The Business Dashboard is next. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.